Greetings, class. My name is Anwar Johnson. I'm a senior philosophy major, psychology minor from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And for the video alternative to one of the papers that we had to write on something out of the book that Dr. Nobis is editing, I chose the last segment, which was on reparations. And so basically, I will be discussing the issue of morality in America and how people don't think that they're responsible for reparations through, my overview of it. And just really bringing it home with some other points. So to start off, the author, he asks the question, what if race didn't exist and what that world would look like? And that's to him from the elimination of like purse clutching women, like who have a paranoid stigma of like black people and teenagers, to like the indiscriminate selection of candidates based off of their names. So Lakeisha and Jamal versus Bill and Sarah. And so the author then further asserts that, inequality would still persist. And the still persistence, that he talks about, he's quoted in William Wilson's work, The Truly Disadvantaged. And so, according to Wilson, disadvantage is transmitted intergenerationally. What neighborhood you grow up in, and what educational and occupational attainment of your parents or parents. There are which are largely determinative of your life prospects. So the sudden disappearance of skin color prejudice would not be sufficient to root out the spatial and structural factors from which the transmission of disadvantage over time draws its strength. So that was crazy to me because, I know we talk about idealistic worlds all the time, impossible worlds where, these things aren't a factor anymore. But I don't think it's crazy to believe that when they're not a factor, they still are a factor. And I think that's generally because of how deep, deeply rooted of an issue is, not even just in black people, but, white people as well. But I'll further get into it. So going back, the author goes from, his idea of why, racial inequality would still exist from Wilson's work to, talking about his own idea of racial inequality by describing it as a product of a system of scientifically rationalized subordination legitimized by law over the course of American history, coined as the enduring effects of historical injustice. And that really brought him to the idea of affirmative action. And basically what affirmative action is, it's like this new progressive way to change, like by increasing the number of racial minorities, like who hold high prestige jobs and university diplomas. It gives them like money, but it leaves out, majority of the middle class black people who are either below the poverty line or who aren't making that type of money and don't qualify for it. So the author further expresses his reservations about affirmative action by stating that race-based affirmative action favors individuals who come from families with high educational expectations and high hopes. So it's not even just, a currency like equivalence. Like it's basically saying if you're doing, like, if you're well off in life, if you're wealthy, like not just like, not that you just have money, but if like through your lineage you show wealth and you show like a promise, like as a person, which is kind of racist when we think of it in itself, because white people are white. The government is essentially saying that black people should only be afforded opportunities if they show promise, when all black people, should have that opportunity to show their promise, and it shouldn't be gauged because of their lineage, and it shouldn't be gauged because of how much money that, previous generations have made and what they've done with their money. So, the opposite of affirmative action, well, not the opposite, but a different way to go about it would have been reparations. So reparations, they go to the most disadvantaged citizens rather than the most qualified, who would benefit more under preferential hiring, but who have generally suffered less from the effects of discrimination. But when it came to reparations, 96% of white Americans were opposed to it, and 33% of blacks said no as well. And it raises so many questions about reparations. And like I said, the two of which that I'm going to address or is the issue of morality and why people don't think that they should be responsible for reparations. So to just kick it off, the author discusses Aristotle's claim that when harm is done to someone, the victimizer is responsible for restoring what has been lost to the victim. So the author shows how America is based against this as a whole because compensatory justice, reparative justice, does not suggest returning to a prior state of wholeness or well-being, in that the last thing American government wants to do is turn back the clock because it will hold them to a higher moral standard. And since principles like liberty and justice are the ones upon which claims to legitimacy rest, race-based subjugation is morally impermissible according to any theory of liberal democracy worthy of the name. So furthermore, he goes into the one drop rule and how it's a sticky situation of even really determining who gets reparations now that, like, since if you have one drop of black in you, you're black. And that's more than I assume, like, are people existing, like, in America than were at the time when reparations, like, would have been instituted. So coming back to how I said this is really about the issue of morality. When we really go back and look at all the things that I was stating, I feel like the moral issue is, as I said before, in how these racial inequalities would still exist even in the absence of, racial inequality. Because I feel like, us just killing it at the thought isn't enough, because it's not just like psychological, it's social, and we see that, like, every day. So I feel as if a world where race doesn't exist in thought, is really, I feel like, what the author was trying to say. Because although he does discuss, the social aspect and all these other aspects, the fact that it's a moral issue, like, brings it into something way deeper than what he's trying to get at. So even if reparations still, like, was on the table, there's a moral issue about it, because I feel as if that the white government and white people know that in this world, like, there would still be some type of racial inequality, and there's no point in giving back to people when we already know we're still going to, subjugate them to, social, psychological, like, inequalities. And so, in conclusion, the reason why people don't think that they're responsible for reparations is still a moral issue, because essentially it's based off of the idea that they don't think that they should be held accountable for the sins of their ancestors. But when you look at, a lot of religious doctrine, that is heavily influenced by America and that America has used to subjugate black people throughout slavery and throughout, history, we've been responsible for the deeds of our ancestors. So I guess that's just something to think about in moving forward with the discussion of reparations and the moral issue of reparations, and how people don't think they're responsible for, giving back to, black people as far as reparations. And, going back to the argument that, like I said, like, a lot of white people and white government make, as far as I shouldn't hold myself, accountable. Like, it's for the author. I like that it wasn't a personal thing. Like, it wasn't like, it's not, you shouldn't think about it as, I feel like I shouldn't give back. It's, as citizens of a government that is failing, we should hold ourselves accountable to, help and really aid our fellow citizens. Because that's more along the lines of the justice that, the American like institution in all doctrines like rest upon like that we talked about earlier. That was just my 2 cents at the end. Thank you.